Time right now for a Sioux Falls real estate update with Brent Baker. How are you, sir?
Well, I'm a sunny guy today.
Yes, you are. Brent is a real estate agent. He is with Clients First Group and Keller Williams in Sioux Falls. And we like to get together about once a week and kind of chat about fun real estate things. Sometimes we get off into the weeds. That's usually my fault. So, but we're going to try to stick to it today. 10 answers to the questions confused buyers are asking. And this is probably something that's been going on as long as there have been real estate agents. There are buyers that are going, wait a minute, what? What about this? And how about that? And I suppose these are some of the things that you get to deal with on a daily basis, aren't they?
They are. A lot has changed in the real estate world, and a lot is going to change very shortly. There's confusion amongst realtors, buyers, sellers, and some of that is the fault of the realtors, not always being as transparent as they could be or actually understanding themselves so they could convey how things work. So there's been a lawsuit, and the news, typical of the news, one has the story wrong, two has their own slant.
Yeah.
Which they go hand in hand. If it's got a slant, it's wrong.
Yeah.
But over time, things come to the surface, and now it's the day of reckoning is here.
So what is the lawsuit about?
So some of this is about transparency, which doesn't make a lot of sense in many ways, but we are dealing with the Department of Justice here. So transparency on their part isn't always so clear.
Yeah.
But what has been traditional is that when somebody wants to sell their home, there's a listing contract. And in that listing contract, it states what is going to the firm representing the buyer. It might be the same firm. It could be a different firm.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the way, somebody says, well, why do I have to pay the buyer agent?
Okay.
And if you look at it, so the government economists have said, well, if you didn't have to pay the buyer agent, you would get to keep this much more money. Typical economist, not all economists, but typical, is that if we cut that, you get more. Well, that's not true.
Yeah, that's not quite how it works.
Yeah, that's not how life works at any level, because somewhere there has to be an accountability for the work that a buyer agent goes through. And the source of the money is the buyer.
Yeah.
The seller's not going to get anything until there is a buyer.
Yeah.
So when that buyer agrees to purchase your home, they are the ones that are paying the listing agent and so forth. Now, the listing agent has, in their listing contract, agreed to pay the buyer agent a percentage or a dollar amount, whatever that case may be.
And none of this seems confusing to me because we've been doing this for like 100 years now.
It's been going on for a very, very
maybe
long
longer than
time.
100 years. Were they selling pyramids this way? A realtor is selling a pyramid. Maybe not that. But.
There is a agent in town who says he's the procuring cause of the Louisiana purchase. And one day he said he wrote the contract. Another day.
Well, you never know.
So he's been around long.
So what are some of the questions that have come up with this that people are talking about?
So currently, when a listing is on the multiple listing service, the agents post on there what the buyer's side will get. Now, that's between the firms.
Yeah.
It's not published to the public.
Yeah.
What the Department of Justice says, we don't want any of that. So when you're negotiating for the price of the house, you also have to negotiate your compensation.
Oh.
So the terms commission go away, and a lot of things are going to change. We don't have all of the details yet, so there's still some tweaking going on.
It sounds like we're fixing a problem that's not really a problem.
You are absolutely correct.
That just seems really weird to me. So now, if I'm looking for a home, instead of me finding the home I want, now I got to find the home I want, and we got to find a deal that's going to be the right deal for everybody involved as well. Take all of that out of the equation, make it easy, and let me just find a home I want. And if there's already an agreement ahead of time that when you find whatever home it is, this is what your pay is, this is what my pay is, this is how everybody's compensated. That's never been a muddy thing. That's always been very clear. So
correct.
I don't understand any of this. Can I go to bat for you guys and try to get this done in an afternoon?
Well, You know, I get some of it to some degree. Because like I said, from the economist's point of view, well, if we didn't have to pay them, or you have said what it's going to be, well, yeah, that's part of the comfort is now we're just negotiating what the purchase price will be. We don't have this separate negotiation.
Yeah.
We cannot publish anywhere, what we are offering the buyer agent. Now, some people think the buyer agent is going to go away. Well, no. You still need that fiduciary responsibility that we've talked about in other shows. You need somebody working on your behalf.
Because if there's only an agent for the person selling the home and you have to work with that same agent, there's nobody looking out for you, the buyer. Nobody looking out for your best interest.
That is how real estate was done many, many years ago.
Yeah.
And so South Dakota, Minnesota, and several other states have what's called buyer agency. In fact, the bulk of states have buyer agency. Some actually have rules against limited agency or dual agency where one agent represents the buyer and the seller. And you can see why. Because if one agent's doing both parties, he can't do or say anything that puts one party at a disadvantage to another.
Yeah.
Now that sounds like, well, what problems could there be? Well, in our conversations over the time, we've talked about really old houses.
Yeah.
The older the house, the more probability of things being found as a result of inspections or appraisal, or just some of the legal things that can come up.
Yeah.
Whether it's a short sale, a divorce, or some other entanglement, surveys. I sold a property one time, listed the property. It turned out the house was 9 inches on the adjoining property.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Does that matter? Yeah. A little bit?
Might be a little problem there.
Yeah.
So you want somebody working on your behalf, and statistics show, I forget what the number is, but I think it's like 76% of buyers want separate representation. Yeah. And if you've never been through the process, you don't understand the depth of what goes on.
Yeah.
And why it's important that you be represented. I mean, I've done limited agency, but I don't like to do it on old houses.
So while all of this nonsense is going on here on a national level, if I want to buy my home or sell my home, right now it's business as usual, right? Or are there changes that are happening instantly?
Changes are happening now.
Okay.
The task force is being appointed and so forth to change the documents that we work with.
Changing some wording on things then, or is that?
Right. And also how we're going to have to explain to the public how it's going to work going forward. Okay. So it goes right back to being a functionary or a fiduciary, explaining what you do and why it's done that way, and then delivering.
Well, if somebody listening has questions on this, because I'm flipping ahead and looking, and a lot of this is going to bore us all to sleep, Brent. So, and I think that all of these are just pointless changes that they want to make. But that is John's opinion. That's not Brent's opinion. That's John's opinion. But if somebody does have a question on this, or let's just throw out this one. Maybe they want to buy a home or they want to sell a home. Can they reach out to you and either get your help with that or get any questions answered that they have on this silly thing?
Certainly. I do buyer and seller consultations. I like when buyers come to my office.
Yeah.
And we sit down in a conference room and I show them the documents on a screen.
Yeah.
I want them to know what that document says before we find the house.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're worried about what am I signing and the offer on the house, where I want you to understand the process. I want you to understand the document. I don't expect you to remember everything I go over.
Absolutely.
But we want to get you through that. And then sellers, obviously, I sit down in the house and we go through the documents. But we also have an understanding of what the house is.
Very nice.
So
if somebody would like to reach out to you, what is the best way, sir?
605-310-0297 or Brent Baker at kw.com.
Again, Brent Baker is with Clients First Group and Keller Williams in Sioux Falls. And if you're catching the tail end of this and you're like, oh man, I wish I would have heard more of that, you can find this also as a podcast at SiouxFallsPodcast.com.